welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Peter Bragg, Canon EMEA Director of Sustainability and Government Affairs. Today we'll be discussing Canon's approach to sustainability and circularity across its business and how it's helping its customers reduce environmental impact through a range of products and services which are sustainable by design. So welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you, Lola. Great to be here and great to be on the podcast. Thank you.
So before we get into the conversation, could you tell us a bit about yourself, your career history and your role at Canon Europe?
Of course, yeah. So I joined Canon nearly 3 years ago, back in 2021. I'm one of those people who spend my entire career doing sustainability-related roles, a kind of mixture of corporate consultancy, UK and overseas as well. Spent a bit of time working in Australia. And actually, prior to joining Canon, my background was a little bit more infrastructure, kind of transport related. So joining Canon, I was fairly new to the world of kind of print and imaging technology, but yeah, really enjoying my time here. It's fantastic company to work for. In terms of sustainability at Canon, I lead the function across the EMEA region, also government affairs as well. So we've got also part of the team based in Brussels, but really we look after everything sustainability related in kind of the broader sense of the word. So kind of the traditional compliance areas of the function, things like ISO 14001, all of our reporting. But of course, as it's become much more important, our overall sustainability strategy, what we're doing to deliver on that as a business and also for our customers as well.
Yeah, no, it's a very broad remit, isn't it, to be covering such a, I guess, complex area, especially as you say. It covers everything from compliance and regulation to what Canon's doing internally as well as externally. So to get a bit of an understanding on how Canon's sustainability strategy has evolved, can you tell us a bit more about Canon's sustainability strategy and what its key priorities are for the coming year?
Yeah, of course. I think just look at the kind of genesis of sustainability. Actually, it's kind of rooted in our Kyosei philosophy, which a few people have heard of, which means broadly living and working together for the common good. That dates back, actually, I think it was coined in the 1980s. So we could kind of argue we were doing sustainability before sustainability became a thing. But yeah, as a function, I guess we were probably more traditionally, like most organisations, again, more compliance focused. But as sustainability's risen up the agenda, the priority for us as a team has changed as well, and that's become far more important. So I said we've got Kyosei, but our strategy, I suppose, is reasonably traditional in the way we set it out. So a lot of people have heard of ESG, environment, social governance, and that's really the way that we again split our strategy. So under those three pillars, for us, it's about reducing environmental impact, and that's of our products, of our own operations, and again, through our products and services for our customers as well. I'll come back to that one. We've also got then creating positive social impact, which we recognise through our purpose as a business, that we've got a key role to do that as well. And then the third pillar is really around that kind of product ethics and compliance, making sure that for our customers that they know that they're buying a product that kind of meets all the required regulations, that's ethically produced, meets all of the human rights requirements. But again, you can then break down the environment pillar of that. And for us, our key priority areas really are in two areas. So one is around reducing CO2 emissions, reducing our carbon emissions. And again, that links to what we can do from our products to make them, as energy efficient as possible. And we recognise, of course, that then has a direct relation for our customers, but also about our own operations as well and what we can do to reduce our own carbon emissions. On the other side, though, it's about circular economy and really, all of the principles around being more circular as a business. So extending lifetime of products, making sure those products, that they're high quality, that we can keep them in use for longer, but then also having programs around remanufacture, kind of refurbishment, reuse, and then at the end of life, making sure that they are recycled and dealt with responsibly as well. So for us, so other businesses, and we do have some really cool kind of biodiversity programs going on, but those two environmental areas are probably the critical ones for us.
Yeah, and I think we'll come back to the kind of circularity around your products and services and remanufactured, the Canon's remanufactured approach. I just wanted to pick up on the sustainability goals you have around net zero. I think you're targeting 2050. Could you tell us a bit about that? Because I know it's been re-baselined, and also the fact you've got validation as well this year.
So Canon's actually had quite a long-term CO2 reduction target in place for a number of years. That was based on a kind of per product index basis, so call it a normalized target, and that was to reduce product CO2 emissions by 50% by 2030. So that target remains in place, but that encompasses all sorts of the emissions of the product in manufacture, logistics, all of the emissions that we produce in our offices and facilities. A couple of years ago, Canon recognised that it needed to kind of really embrace net zero as a principle. Obviously, governments all around the world were, other corporates. So Canon initially set itself a target to aim for net zero by 2050. But it also recognised the need to kind of underpin that, as, again, many other corporate organisations have done as well, and meeting customer requirements. So it looked at getting SBTi validation for its targets. Now, SBTi, to achieve validation of targets, requires certain changes. You have to look at absolute targets. And it's about absolute emissions reduction. You also can't have baseline years that are too far back. So our previous target was on a baseline year of 2008, but that was too far gone. So Canon re-baselined and actually set a baseline year in the year that actually initially applied for SBTi, which was 2022, the first full year that had data for. So it applied in 23, but 2022 was that full year. So it set 2022 as a baseline year. And Canon, at this stage, has gone for SBTi validation for its near-term carbon target, which is 2030. So it's still got 2050 for net zero, but the validated target is 2030. And that's been validated, that was done late last year by SBTi, as being fully in line with the 1.5 degree kind of trajectory that is expected. So we've got some quite ambitious, it's still a very ambitious target for us. We've got to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 42% by 2030, and our scope 3 emissions by 25%. So, still a lot of work to achieve that. And I said, it wasn't any kind of rollback of targets. It was more just to achieve SBTi validation. Very pleased that we had that late last year. So that's now a real key focus for us this year, is building our detailed plans on how we're going to meet those targets.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, just touching on what we mentioned earlier, it's a very sort of complex area, the whole kind of ESG focus that many vendors have. And we've seen when we've been researching our sustainability leaders report that it's really important that vendors provide more transparency on how they're achieving those targets. And I think that's something we'll probably see that's coming more into place with the CSRD regulation as well. And I think it's great that Canon's got this validation now, because it means that on a kind of level playing field with many of the other technology vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned CSRD there, and that's another big stepping stone for us. We come under CSRD. Our first reporting year is 2025. So the first report you'll see from us is 2026. But again, that's going to drive a whole new level of kind of transparency and reporting for us. And obviously, from a CSRD perspective, a lot of the KPIs are around CO2 emissions, both for our own operations, but also in our value chain as well. So, like many organisations, CSRD is a huge kind of piece of work really for us. But I think we're only looking at it as it's quite a big project, quite a big thing. A lot of work to get it done, but actually we see it as a big opportunity as well to really drive our strategy forward, and to help us, hopefully to demonstrate, as you say, kind of through our channels to our customers, that extra transparency around obviously not just carbon and CO2, but all of the other measures around kind of social, workforce and governance as well.
And so picking up on that point, in terms of customer requirements that you're seeing, because we're seeing increasingly that customers are looking for, like I say, not only more transparency from their vendors, but also ways of how vendors can actually support them on the sort of reaching their sustainability goals. So, for example, assessment services, helping them reduce impacts around the print infrastructure. So could you talk a bit about sort of particular customer needs you're seeing, and if you're seeing anything particularly different across different verticals and different regions?
Yeah, sure. As you say, kind of sustainability is not just risen up the agenda for us. It's much higher up the agenda for a lot of our customers. We're seeing, I'm not sure there's probably any tender now that doesn't have at least a basic sustainability requirement. And we're seeing in some markets, we've started to see sometimes sustainability criteria even trump commercial and pricing, which is really interesting. For it to be given, say 30% of the marking in an overall assessment across different markets. The key. Well, I like to say, there's a difference between public sector and private sector, but then I guess actually in terms of ambition, maybe not so much, but I guess what you could say is public sector is much more uniform, like we're seeing it across the piece in public sector. On the more commercial customer side, it's a little bit more varied. So some are still asking the more basic requirements, but then some of them are asking really advanced questions, as you say, about, this is the good old days of tick, do you have ISO 14001 and environmental policy are long gone. As you say, this is much more about, these are our net zero targets. How are you, Canon, going to align with those targets? How are you going to support with us meeting those targets? We're seeing some on the public sector side in the UK, NHS, with NHS 2045 being an example of very rigid, robust milestones around net zero timeframes that the NHS space is saying, get on board with this, or by 2030, I think it's 2030, you will no longer be a supplier to the NHS. So, those huge customers, it's critical that we help, we address those needs and are able to reflect, kind of align with and reflect those goals. But I think on a real positive note, we're also seeing some customers really see that collaboration piece come out as well now. My message quite often is saying, this is a big journey of collaboration. We won't do this alone. And those customers are saying to us, almost, they're saying, we don't know what the answer is, but we want to work with you, Canon, in a collaborative way. When they're looking at new business models or how they can adapt, saying, well, how can we make this work with the services you're providing and still meet our net zero goals or some of the other sustainability objectives they've got. So that kind of shared kind of collaborative approach piece is growing more and more as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, the whole collaboration approach to sustainability, because I think, like you say, customers are looking for that guidance and partnership model with their suppliers. And it's interesting with the print industry because I think, as you mentioned, sustainability has been quite well embedded in many companies like Canon in terms of the kind of circular approaches around manufacturing and end of life. And we'll come to a bit more to that shortly. And I think it's an opportunity now for print vendors to really educate the market in terms of exactly what they're doing across that life cycle, and also potentially address some of the I suppose the perception around print not being sustainable and paper and the usage of paper, but it's also how Canon can help customers improve their digitization, digital transformation, while also ensuring they're using energy efficient devices and so on. So it's, like you say, it's a collaborative approach across many areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And just finally, because I know you asked about regional approaches as well, and regional differences, and that's quite an interesting one for us as well in seeing, broadly looking after EMEA is quite interesting because you do see a kind of gradient of approach to sustainability. Broadly the most mature Western Europe, and getting perhaps less mature as we head through kind of Eastern Europe into Middle East and into Africa. But even so, with that being said, we're seeing increases across all markets, and sometimes there's a regional variation in what the area of interest. So Southern Europe, Spain especially, is really interested in circular economy, and again, we're talking a minute about our remanufactured. So the devices we've got and the services around that. Other areas, perhaps the Nordics, really interested in human rights and transparency. Other areas, perhaps UK, France, more focused around net zero CO2 emissions. So some interesting variations there as well, which again makes it really interesting when we're trying to develop our own strategy of thinking, how can we do a strategy that fits all across this broad market.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach across different regions. And you mentioned there about Southern Europe, and I think typically those regions are dominated by a lot of smaller customers and smaller businesses. So are you seeing a different approach or different requirements from SMBs and that sort of SME market, and also perhaps it's a good opportunity to talk a bit about the channel proposition you have and how you're helping your channel deliver those sustainability propositions to their customers?
I think, there's definitely sections, but I think broadly the SMEs are probably slightly less demanding in terms of what they're looking for. It's more as you say, when you're looking at channel partners, it's seeing the demand that's being put on them from big customers, probably like Canon, that are saying to their supply chain, trying to drive them forward. I said kind of that Southern European thing, it's more public sector actually, and kind of some of the regional administration, certainly in Spain, kind of the healthcare sector as well, that's really driving us forward on some of those circularity areas as well. But in terms of channel partners, they're an absolutely vital part of our business and really important to us. And my vision, I guess, is, ideally I'd love for, them to be embracing what we're doing about sustainability, to be able to communicate, the same message, almost one voice and a consistent voice. If it's the same ultimate end customer or maybe smaller, we want them to get the same message. But I appreciate that's, that they don't have teams the size that I do to help deliver that. And we need to get information to them in a way that's kind of easy to access, understandable, digestible. As we keep saying, sustainability, it's easy to say one word, but actually it's so broad now in terms of what's required. And when you start getting into the details of scope 1, scope 2 emissions, or what's scope 3 and all of this stuff, it's quite complex. So we've got our partner portal, which is a really, really great resource. There's lots of information in there. We've got training packages, presentations, templates, all sorts of materials that our partners can access. We're actually doing a refresh of that at the moment, and there's going to be more kind of co-creating material, social tiles, and lots of stuff in there. And I think, and we're going to be rolling out training as well around that for our partners and also for our business centres as well. But I think the most valuable thing is, again, that collaboration, that face-to-face opportunities, and we've got the resources. We have a responsibility really to help our partners, and to expect them to pick up on all this stuff and run with it is, it's too much. And we need to help them on that journey, give them the training and materials that they need as well.
Yeah, and that kind of aligns with what we're seeing in the research we do across the channel. We ran a channel sustainability study, and actually one of the key areas that is kind of a roadblock or holding many channel partners back is that they don't have the information from their vendor partners to provide clear evidence on sustainability claims and environmental features and so on. So I think it's great that Canon's really supporting and guiding its channel to create these propositions, because like you say, it's not just the hardware and the features on the energy efficiency and eco mode settings, for example. It's also software and services and being able to kind of align that with the outcomes their customers are looking for. So so I think that leads quite nicely actually to the next question I wanted to ask you around the products and services you're offering your customers. I know it's quite a broad question again, but is there anything in particular that you're focusing on this year in terms of products, software solutions and services?
We've got some great products, and in terms of the kind of sustainability attributes of those products as well. So really good energy efficiency. So the tech values, I think we're looking at kind of 25% reduction on previous models, those types of things. For us, we've got a really good range of software solutions that run alongside our products. So we've got our Uniflow system that is all the kind of printing only on request or on demand, making sure that print is done as efficiently as possible. We've got products like our Therefore solution as well, that's kind of workflow management and digital signatures. So again, it's making sure that the printing that people need to do, that it's done as sustainably as possible. And they kind of minimize the need to kind of print unnecessarily and create waste that goes alongside that. We've also got our offering of we try and optimize. We can do site survey, site questionnaires, and kind of optimize again the number of devices that our customers have. But we also offer for that residual emissions that's left over. I'll call it an offsetting service. There's a lot of debate at the moment, and I think I'm sure we'll come on to it in a minute about green claims and everything else. So we now call it that. We've been working with Climate Partner, that are our offsetting provider, and we now call that Climate Project Contribution. So it's effectively the same service, but what it enables us to do is to take the residual emissions that a customer kind of will be left with, but able to use verified, credible projects to reduce emissions somewhere else. So we're moving away from the like climate neutrality and those types of claims. There's obviously been emerging regulation coming out actually in recent weeks and months around this and around the terminology. So we've worked and we've tried to respond very quickly to that. Because we see that service is still very critical for many of our customers, and it's very popular. So we just want to make sure that it meets all the requirements that it needs to around making sure it's the correct terms and it's all as credible. It's credible and it meets all the requirements needed.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing, is that there's so much terminology and complexity around sustainability and, like you say, these different terms. And I think it's really important that companies like Canon can provide more clarity around what they're actually delivering. And actually, there's a lot of opportunities around the print infrastructure to reduce environmental impact. So the energy efficiency of devices, but also, like you say, minimizing wasteful printing. Even cloud printing can reduce the reliance on print service, and that means you're reducing energy costs as well. So there's a lot of areas, and I think, like you say, it's not just one kind of approach. There's lots of different areas, and one of the areas we touched on earlier was around remanufactured and refurbished devices. And I know Canon has quite a strong heritage in terms of remanufacturing, and it's got a specific product line for this. So I think before we get into what the actual product line is, maybe you could just explain the difference between remanufactured and refurbished products, because I think that's something that a lot of us are really unclear on in terms of what really is the difference and what the kind of certification and guarantees are around those different types of products.
Sure. I'll try and explain this in simple terms because that's the only way I understand it as well. So basically, remanufacturing is kind of the top tier of it's a version of refurbishment, I guess, but our products that go through a remanufactured process, it's almost the same kind of production process as building a new machine. So devices are completely stripped down. Any worn parts or broken parts are replaced. Everything is cleaned. But the absolute key difference is the counter is reset to zero, and also the device itself is given a new serial number, kind of barcode on the back, and it's sold as we use the phrase, an as new device. And having been to our site, when you see those devices, they do look brand new. I have to say, they're almost indistinguishable from to my untrained eye from something that's brand new. So refurbishment is like a kind of slightly lower tier. So again, any broken parts obviously are replaced, but basically it's the machine is thoroughly cleaned, serviced, any broken parts replaced, anything kind of upgraded that needs to be upgraded, and then that's put back on the market effectively as a second-hand refurbished device. So slightly less intensive, and I guess slightly less, it's less done in a kind of controlled environment. But last year we actually put in place a whole program around our refurbished devices as well to kind of ensure the Canon quality and to ensure that our customers get what they expect in terms of quality. So yeah, that's the broad difference really. I said Reman is the kind of top tier, everything, to create that as new device. Refurbished is just a slightly lower level, but you're still getting a fantastic quality used device at the end of the process.
Yeah, and so are you seeing sort of increase in demand for those so remanufactured or refurbished products because sustainability is higher on the agenda, and is it particular sectors or organisations that are particularly interested in it?
Yeah, I think I touched on this earlier. Interestingly, Southern Europe is a key market for us, but we are seeing growth across other markets as well. I think between 2022 and 2023 on Colour A3, we saw a doubling of demand for those remanufactured and refurbished devices. As you say, that's very much being driven by sustainability requirements, but I think as well the kind of as the quality of the process has improved. As I said, the devices are so good now. If you buy a remanufactured device, it might be a 4-year-old device or 4 or 5-year-old device, but the quality is so good now that if you're just there's no need really. Sometimes you could if you just need a certain level of print output per year, then a remanufactured device will do everything that you need, hopefully at an improved price point, but also that meets your sustainability ambitions. So for many customers, it's a win-win scenario, I guess. But yeah, it's for our customers, as I said, it's that some might choose a remanufactured because they want that top tier. They want the as new. But for many customers, that refurbished option as well is a very attractive offer. Last year, we put in place a program which we called Certified Used. So we have in Gießen in Germany, which is where we do our remanufacturing. We call it our centre of excellence, but our Gießen technicians are able to go and effectively audit our refurbishment sites, which is done more locally, and to give, once they've done all of those checks, they can then give a certificate authorising that site to be able to issue certified used machines, and that then gives the customer the kind of warrant, the guarantee that they're getting that Canon quality as well.
Yeah, so it's so Canon's really one of the key vendors we see in the market that has that strategy for obviously new products, and also offering products that last longer, because I think that's that product longevity is obviously important as well for customers. So they're not constantly replacing their devices at the end of every MPS contract, for instance, but also the opportunity to use certified used or remanufactured devices. So, and we'll put some more information in the show notes around Canon's portfolio, specifically about remanufactured devices. So no, it's been really interesting to hear how Canon's helping customers reduce their environmental impact. And I think I wanted to understand a bit more about the social impacts, because you mentioned that before. And I think that's obviously a key element of the ESG in terms of the social side. So could you talk a bit about the programs that Canon is offering on a global as well as European basis? So yeah, social impact, it's key for us, and it links actually to our overall brand purpose. And we've recognised the importance of that, that for Canon, there's more purpose to us as a business in terms of what we do, and that we have a societal kind of obligation as well. Interestingly as well, one of the drives as well is the increased attention on social value, and certainly in the UK is a great example of where we're seeing that even at a tender stage now as well. So in public sector
tenders, we have to demonstrate how much social value we're adding through the lifetime of the contract, and what programs we're going to put in place to do that. We're very fortunate that we've got existing programs in place that we can offer. So probably the most important one is we've got our Canon Young People program that we run across the EMEA region. So we've been running that for a number of years, and essentially that is we work with partners to identify groups of disadvantaged young people, broadly kind of age 12 to 18-ish. And we go out using our Canon ambassadors as well. So ambassadors are kind of sponsored, effectively Canon-sponsored professional photographers. So we go out, we talk to the young people about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, what they mean to them and their lives. We show them how to use cameras and how to take really strong, powerful images. And then we kind of set them free to go off and take images of things that are important to them. And some of the outputs of that are absolutely incredible. And then we run exhibitions, we're able to then print photos, do a variety of things. So last year, I think we held sessions in 32 countries. I think we had about 1,200 participants as well. So that's a really valuable way that we're able to use it's kind of using our products, our technology in a way that's meaningful and credible. We're not just getting the checkbook out and giving some money to something. And that gives it a really close link as well to our employees and people in the business. So, we're able, quite often employees get involved in those programs as well. So that's really valuable one. We've also got another big program in Africa. And currently only in Africa, but that's our Malaysia program. And that is perhaps aimed at a slightly older age group, but again, giving the opportunity for training and training and development in how to become a photographer, videographer, using our equipment as well. And that's to really give young people that opportunity to get a career, to actually start earning a living, or even in print as well. So, and I know that a number of those kind of alumni from that program are actually employed by Canon as well. So it's really important to us, those social programs, that it links to our purpose. But interestingly, more and more, we're seeing it as a great thing that we can include as part of our social value proposition when we're doing that. The final piece of that jigsaw, though, of course, is actually kind of measuring the social value. What does that actually mean? And more, we're looking at how we can measure the value of not just social impact, actually, but our wider sustainability impact as well. So that we can look at that both internally and externally, all the different ways that sustainability now touches the business.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating, because I think Canon, it always performs really well in our sustainability brand perception, in terms of not just in the print industry, but in general, because Canon has such strong brand equity in the consumer as well as the B2B space. And I think the young people aspect is really interesting, because ultimately they are the ones that are most environmentally conscious and socially aware, and ultimately they'll be the next decision makers and influencers in business as well. So I think it's really interesting to hear how Canon's actually influencing and working with the younger generation will be the next the next generation in the workforce. So that's been really useful to understand a bit. And so I've covered quite a lot. And as I say, in the show notes, we'll put information about Canon's sustainability strategy. But just to finish off, I'd be interested if you have any views on key sustainability trends for 2024, anything that's particularly you think will change the landscape in the coming year, and perhaps what's next for Canon as well.
I think something we've touched on already, actually, CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. For Canon and many other organisations, that's really going to I think we're going to see quite a step change in terms of how much information is communicated externally. For anyone that is close at all to CSRD, you'll know the huge number of data points that CSRD requires you to look at about what's material for you, and for us as a business, and how we communicate that, but also then, as I said, look at the value chain. And so again, that's going to really force us to kind of that communication with our supply chain and working with our supply chain to get that information. So that remains a key priority for 2024. We touched on kind of green claims and greenwashing as well. We're really conscious of that. Again, the challenges for people like channel partners as well. And I find it quite challenging in terms of the balance on greenwashing as well, because we all know that for sustainability messaging, often, it's the kind of the regular, frequent, simple messaging that is what actually reminds people that what you're doing and really changes behavior. Yet some of the requirements that are coming out around this, saying, you must only do data that's got verification and, only quite complex information. And my fear is, I guess, that people will be too scared to say anything in case they get it wrong. And we're constantly reviewing stuff internally that our marketing teams work really hard at putting together. And I get, we must sound like complete pains in the backside to kind of say, oh no, you can't say that word, but perhaps you could say that word. And you can see for someone that's not as close to it, that it's really challenging to find, to know what is the right thing to do. So it's finding that, I said, kind of walking that tightrope between not saying anything, but making sure that we say the right thing, and that it's credible, that it's backed up. The days of kind of going, we're the most sustainable company in the world, that's no longer going to cut it anymore. So those are key areas. And I think linked to that, and again, just perhaps slightly longer on horizon, there's a lot of regulation coming around product sustainability. We've got the Eco Design Directive, EU level, and things like green product passports. All of this, again, it's all about driving transparency and more availability, I guess, of information to customers. So I think those are all the probably the main things. Again, our internal focus this year and probably for the next couple of years is really about those CO2 targets, those global targets. Fantastic that they're all signed off and validated by SBTi and out there, but of course we've got to deliver against those as well, and we need to make sure that we meet those commitments. And for anyone again that's kind of close to this, it's easy to drop out a number like 42% reduction, but it's an absolute reduction as well. So it doesn't matter how much more business we do or how many more products we sell, we still need to make those emissions reductions. So that's going to be a real key focus, is actually really making sure we push those things. But I guess, it does feel the overall climate on sustainability, excuse the pun, it's kind of, but has changed slightly in the last few months. We all, post-COVID, there was kind of this massive bounce on sustainability, and everyone was kind of race to the top, as it were. And it feels, and I think it's a good thing, there's been a dose of realism, perhaps, and we're seeing some very big corporates like Unilever, for instance, just use their slightly different language, just talking about things having to be financially realistic, and to make sure things are achievable. But I only see that really as a good thing. If there isn't a proper full business case for doing something, and that business case has to encompass all the sustainability requirements, but really you have to question, should you be doing it? We need to make sure that everything we do is, as I said, linked to clear targets, it's credible, and it meets the business needs. We've ultimately got to be have revenue and be profitable as a business, be able to invest in sustainability. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to achieve those aims. So really it's kind of onwards and upwards for the strategy. Keep pushing on sustainability, keep supporting our partners, channel partners, our customers, and keep delivering against our goals.
Well, it sounds like you've got a very busy year ahead in terms of being able to address all these different requirements. And I think, as you say, it's a real fine balance between greenwashing and green hushing and making sure that the information is valid and credible. But I think it's like you say, it's a great opportunity for the print industry to really demonstrate strong sustainability credentials. And so thanks again for sharing an update on Canon. It's been really interesting to hear more, and I look forward to speaking with you in the near future.
Great. Thank you, Louella. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been great. Thank you.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please visit quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.